Hey there, I'm Ryan Johnson, and welcome to episode 8. Hold your breath. I can't feel like I shouldn't talk over this. This is always this. I've probably watched the movie, I don't know how many times, but I'll tell you something. Every time I sit down to watch it, it never gets old. It's that Lucasfilm long time ago, the pause, and then that opening fanfare. Never gets old. So the opening crawl was the very first thing I started writing. I just sat down to write the first draft of the script, and I just said I'm just going to do a version of it. And it was the very last thing I wrote, literally like a day before before they tore the movie out of our hands so they could finish it. I was sitting in the edit room with some of the guys, and we were still tweaking some of the language in it. And shout out to a good friend of mine and good writer, Craig Mazin, who gave me some grammar advice on a couple things here. And he'll be infuriated I called him out because there are still some grammatical things that he thinks are iffy, but he said, well, fine, you can leave those in. The other interesting thing is the opening fanfare. So we re-recorded it with John Williams. They re-record it every time they do it. The more interesting thing for me was in the mix, realizing it's just like mixing a song. Like there's many different ways you can mix that opening fanfare. And if you listen to all the movies, every single one of them has a slightly different take on the mix of the fanfare. Some are brighter, some are warmer. The Force Awakens one has a lot of kind of sharper attack to it. We went for kind of like a warmer type feel. So that was something I never really thought of. You just think the fanfare is the fanfare. So we tilt down. This was not the original opening of the movie. Originally, I had this very clever visual idea where we would come down and find John in the dome kind of healing Bacta suit. Here's Billy Lord, Carrie's lovely daughter. And we would think we were looking at a planet, then we tilt down and find John, and he wakes up, and we started it with that, and then all this happens. And it was very clever, but I realized as we started actually watching the movie with that opening, it was kind of too clever and it just took too long. And, especially in a Star Wars movie, I realized you just have to get to it as quickly as possible. So we kind of reconfigured this new opening where we just leap into the thick of things. Here's the bad guys. Here's what's threatened. Here comes the big ship, the dreadnought, which is, Kevin Jenkins, who is one of our great designers at ILM, kind of ended up designing this thing. So this actress here who plays the monitor, Kate Dickie, she just has two quick little lines in this. She's in a wonderful movie called The Witch with Ralph Ineson, who also had a very small part in this movie. He ended up actually on the cutting room floor. You can see him in the deleted scenes, but they were both in The Witch together. And that was kind of the wonderful thing and also the painful thing about working in London on this film. We would have incredible, wonderful, amazing actors, like, amazing Shakespearean actors who would come on for one day and just say, they found us, it just was single lines. And so it was a blessing and a curse. So we kind of start the movie here with a joke, and this was I held on to this. This was something where I felt like, first of all, I knew that with all kind of the heaviness of it being the middle chapter, and I knew people were going to come in, the expectations of all the grand opera of it, and I really wanted this movie to be fun. I loved the tone that JJ and that, Michael and Larry set with The Force Awakens, and the tone of the original films as a spirit of fun to it. I felt like we had to, at the very beginning, kind of break the ice and say, we're going to have fun here. We're going to try some fun stuff, and it's going to be okay to laugh with this movie. So we kind of started with a little Monty Python sketch. Adrian Edmondson, right here, is in the movie because I am a huge fan of AIDS. He was in The Young Ones, and he did a series called Bottom, which I was a huge fan of. And every day that he was on set, I was just trying to play it cool and not start quoting the young ones to him. And Donald Gleason, who we play with in this film, again, in a slightly more comic way than in The Force Awakens. I found the character of Hux, I don't know, I immediately found him very funny. I saw a lot of humor potential in him. And, I knew that Kylo was going to be front and center as kind of the heavy in this movie. We didn't need another heavy between Kylo and Snoke. And so the notion of Hux kind of being this foil that could add a slightly different flavor to everything, I thought could be more useful. One of the very early things I came up with was this notion of BB-8 diving down into the X-wing. We'd always see R2 working on it from the outside, but I thought it could be fun to get down the guts. And I like this little bit of business here. BB-8's trying to plug up the dike. This actor is Mark Lewis Jones, who plays Kennedy, and God, I love him. He's just got such a powerful fire on the base. Our Matt Wood, who is our kind of sound supervisor, was convinced that line "fire on the base" was going to start being used by EDM DJs. You might be right. Oh, Carrie. So this whole kind of like thing between Poe and Leia, this was something that because Poe in The Force Awakens is a fantastic and very like charismatic hero, and I really wanted to kind of figure out something about him that was a weakness to dig into with this. And so the notion of turning from a hero into a leader seemed like a really interesting thing to me. And the notion that with this opening sequence, he's going to win. He's going to have the big, like, blowing up the Death Star moment, but at a cost that, in terms of the bigger picture, was not worth it. And here's a little Star Wars Tokyo Drift moment. There we go. I also love the sparks when those two TIE fighters get hit. It reminds me of some of the early model work with A New Hope. The other interesting thing about the bridge of the Dreadnought is that Steve Yedlin, who's my cinematographer, and Steve and I have been best friends since we were 17 years old. We met in film school. We showed up to that set, and I was like, "Oh, we basically were reusing the same set as the Star Destroyer bridge, but we had kind of repurposed it." But I was like, we need to instantly know that we're here and not there. And so this idea of making it like a submarine and going with red lights, that's Jamie Christopher right there, who just got blown up. It's our first AD. Hi, Jamie. That was something that we just came up with in the day, the red light. And here come the bombers. When we were preparing to make this movie, we watched a bunch of films. We watched, I sat down with the story group, and I came up with, at Lucasfilm, I just came up with a list of movies I thought would be good to kind of draw inspiration from. And 12 O'Clock High was one of them, which is the great film with Gregory Peck, and it's kind of about World War II bombers. And that ended up leading to this opening sequence of kind of a bombing run, and the idea of these bombers that were this is another Kevin Jenkins design, these bombers. I wanted them to be just kind of big cows, like not very maneuverable, and so the fighters have to protect them, just like they did back in the day. This is Veronica, who plays Paige, who is, we'll later find out, Rose's sister. She was so wonderful. She's an actress from Vietnam who came in and just did all this incredibly difficult kind of physical work in like the first week of our shoot. And it's really tough doing stuff like this because it's a lot of really intense little moments that she had to shoot that were logistically tough, and so they were very separated out. So it's all these little isolated moments where I'd have to describe the context to her, and she'd get these intense little beats bit by bit. That right there, I think, was maybe the first shot that we did. in Pinewood. Or popping up, yeah, and falling down. And then that was a stunt performer who did the fallback. We used a special camera to do this. We'd actually used like a digital camera that has a smaller sensor so that we could get the depth of field for that shot. And then this little bit right here was really fun to cut together and to kind of... I on set, I would say we're going to De Palma this moment. We're going to stretch it out kind of to a ridiculous degree and do these slow motion shots where we stretch this moment of her trying to kick that thing down. And then when it actually falls, it was a question of just how long can we stretch this out for, and we kept pushing it and eventually hit a place where it's like, okay, this is the moment. And then this shot is pretty much, I mean, there's green screen down there, and obviously the bombs don't fall all the way down, but it's pretty much practical. They are amazing practical effects guys built a rig where those bombs actually were on runners that could slide down the ends. And so that shot where we boom up and all the bombs fall down around us, those aren't digital bombs. Those are actually real props that were sliding down. And we did that little pickup with Kennedy just because we loved him so much in the edit room. We're like, oh, he deserves a good moment before he goes with Mark. That insert right there, we actually shot during a makeup test. We were doing a makeup test before we started shooting anything. We're like, oh, let's get this out of the way. So this kind of puts a cap on the whole opening bombing sequence. It's interesting. It's fascinating, like how much it changed over the course of editing, structurally even. Like even a sequence like this, where you work out all the effects and you work out all the things, you get it in the edit room, and you still end up pulling big chunks out or moving big chunks around. It's still a very liquid process all the way through the end. The poor stunt guy right there actually hit himself and broke his nose during that fall. He was fine. He was all right. I mean, he wasn't fine. He had a broken nose, but he was fine. And yeah, that I always flinch when I see that. We had a lot. Oh, so this was the original opening shot of the movie. Originally, because we kind of repurposed it for this and added the light speed to put it here. But originally, we panned down from the crawl and found this, and the first thing was Finn waking up. But in that kind of, cut to the chase thing that I found as we got in the cutting room, Star Wars just wanted to be, I realized, well, I guess we don't see Finn until we actually need to see Finn. Which is because originally he woke up at the beginning, the whole bombing sequence happened, and then this happened where we then see him wandering through the hallways. And I realized, well, let's just connect those things up.
Finn, buddy.
This ILM helped out a little bit with some water, but this was a pretty amazing rig that had water spurting out of John, the notion of a portable Bacta suit. So here's Skellig Michael. And this was, we shot here for 3 days, way before the opening, or way before we actually started principal photography. We got a very small crew out and just got a couple of days with Mark and Daisy to shoot this and a couple other little important scenes. But our time on the island was really limited for a lot of reasons, and so we had to really pick our battles in terms of what we shot. But we knew we had to match this as well we could to The Force Awakens ending. Of course, the sun was out while we were shooting, so we couldn't do much about that, but we knew we had to be there for that. So this moment of Mark tossing the saber, fling, that was always just something that made a lot of sense to me in terms of, okay, he's come out to this island, and first thing I had to do when I was writing the script was figure out, why is Luke on this island? And, because we have the enigmatic kind of shot at the end of The Force Awakens. We see his face. We wonder what's going on here. And so he knows his friends are fighting this good fight. He knows there's peril out there in the galaxy, and he's exiled himself way out here and taken himself out of it. And so I had to figure out why. And I knew, because it's Luke Skywalker, who I grew up with as a hero, I knew the answer couldn't be cowardice. So I knew the answer had to be something active. He couldn't just be hiding, and I knew it had to be something positive. He thinks he's doing the right thing. And that kind of led to, hey, Porgs. That led to, sorry, it's tough to keep your train of thought on a serious topic while there are Porgs on the screen. Apologize. That led to the notion that he's come to the conclusion from all the given evidence that the Jedi are not helping, and they're just perpetuating this kind of cycle, and that they need to go away so that the light can rise from a more worthy source. And so suddenly then that turned his exile from something where he's hiding and avoiding responsibility to him kind of taking the weight of the world on his shoulders and bearing this huge burden of knowing his friends are suffering. And because he thinks it's a better, bigger thing for the galaxy, he's choosing to not engage with it. So this was maybe my favorite set, although I'll probably end up saying that a couple times throughout the commentary. But this was extraordinary. This is all practical that you see here. This is a big practical set that Rick Heinrich, our production designer, designed and worked on, along with a lot of other talented designers. And that's a big red curtain that we strung up around it. I mean, everything in the shot, with the exception of Snoke, is real, and it was really amazingly striking when you walked onto it in real life. It just looked like this. And of course, Snoke is played by Andy Serkis, and it's a digital creature, and Andy's doing a motion capture performance. But the nice thing was, I mean, usually sometimes when you do a motion capture, you're just in it's hard to describe quickly, but you're in just an abstract space, because when you're capturing a performance in motion capture, you're just capturing the actor moving, so you don't need him on the set. But here, we actually built the motion capture rig over the set. We strung up a big truss and put the motion capture cameras in the set, so Andy could actually be on set, sitting on the throne and walking up to him and interacting with the other actors and doing the performance, which was really nice. I am a huge Adam Driver fan, and so I was when I got this job, I was just really excited to get to work with Adam, and especially when I saw his performance in The Force Awakens and realized, this is a really interesting, complicated villain. One of the first things I thought was, I feel like for this film, especially when we're trying to kind of get, deeper into his head, I thought, well, we got to figure out a way to get that mask out of the way. And I started working into it, and I thought, well, it seems actually really natural that, I knew Snoke was going to, in order to manipulate him, as we'll later find out, he's kind of taking him down a peg here. And the idea that, Snoke's reaction to the mask is to kind of ridicule it, and to kind of, suddenly turn it into this symbol of his immaturity, that he's hiding behind this mask. That seemed to make sense to me. The ILM guys did such extraordinary work, and obviously it's the whole performance Andy's performance is all completely there. It's amazing how much it shines through. But there's a level of collaboration that happens with the animators who are creating the digital creature in collaboration with Andy's performance. And those two hand in hand just create something really powerful, but especially in those close-ups, the level of detail they've just got, and just the how photoreal that digital character looks. It was something I was very nervous about coming into it, and it was amazing to see what they ended up doing with it. I smashed that helmet myself. I stomped on it. We actually got a take where it was just kind of split in half, and that was going to be it. And then they were starting to take the camera away. I was like, oh, wait, let's try one where it's totally smashed. And I just literally started stomping on it with both feet until it was shattered, and then that's what we ended up using. So this set is extraordinary. This is in Ireland. This is on the southwest coast of Ireland. And an amazing Irish crew built and actually constructed this Jedi village set on this cliff side. So this is cantilevered out over hundreds of feet of just a sheer cliff drop to the ocean right there. I mean, that's actually right there. That's not a comp. We just built it there and shot it there. And everything to the left, kind of from Daisy on over to the left, is set. But it's all practical. It's all actually there. And it was extraordinary being out there. And then all of this stuff, we just had such a great time shooting in Ireland. We were there at the end of the day. We had just a couple days on Skellig, and then during the actual shoot, we were kind of up down the west coast of Ireland for it was probably about 3 weeks or so. But like we went out to here, and we airlifted this creature in. We actually helicoptered with a cable this massive creature into this very hard to get to rock kind of rock face. And then our amazing Irish crew had to build kind of a safety staircase hundreds of feet all the way down to the edge of that rock face so the crew could get down there. This is amazing. And here, this is an amazing stuntman who is actually doing this. He's suspended by wires, but they actually built a huge suspension thing where he walked out and it pulleyed him out over this very real cliff and drop. So many of these things, you kind of plan them out and you think, oh, okay, then we'll put a thing here and we'll put a pulley out over the cliff here. And then you show up on the day and you see all the amazing, incredible engineering that has actually happened to make the things happen. And it takes your breath away. There's a piece of an X-Wing that has his door, a little detail there. So this was where Daisy kind of stops, where Rey kind of stops, and the tree calls to her. Ren Kleiss, who is our genius sound designer for this film, played with a lot of things to kind of figure out what this would be, this voice calling. It's just one of the many examples in the movie of Ren having to communicate some story points through kind of abstract sound design. This was a set. This we built in London, and this whole kind of hillside and the staircase and the tree. This is basically built in a big a parking lot, but a big concrete, incline, which is pretty extraordinary. That was a special effect. We just had blue screen behind her when we're looking back at the ocean and it pans around. And then this is a set, and this was a really tight little set that it was completely enclosed. It was a 360-degree set, which allowed us to do shots like this, where we would swing around and be able to see the whole thing. We also had to shoot with very wide lenses, and we had to use Steadicam. I actually don't usually like Steadicam. I tend to prefer dollies. I like the feel of dolly moves, but in here we didn't really have a choice. Dave Hamilton Green was our B camera operator for the whole main unit, and also our Steadicam operator. Another thing was Dave actually put the Steadicam rig on me and let me try it, and I'm so happy he did, because I will never take Steadicam operators for granted again. That thing is really like a medieval torture device. I think I lasted a minute and a half in it, and just from standing up with the thing, it's not even doing anything complicated. Sweat was pouring down my face. It's really amazing what a good Steadicam operator can do. And as you can see by a delicate move like this up to Daisy, Dave is a very good Steadicam operator. This is also, Daisy gives, I think, just such a beautiful performance in this movie, and this is one of my favorite moments from it. And so it kills me that I'm now talking over it, but I guess that's what we're all here for. But when she did this take, I remember very distinctly being at the monitor and just getting chills and thinking, she's really something special.
I've seen your daily routine. You're not busy.
I will never join another generation of Jedi.
I love the light that Steve, as soon as Steve hit those shafts of light in, we would figure out ways to get the actors in them. And this line, actually, it's time for the Jedi to end. It's funny, like originally my written line here was something much more kind of convoluted, like, I forget what it was, but it was not as concise as that. It was actually the when we cut the trailer, the trailer guys actually kind of did a condensed version of it that just said it's time for the Jedi to end. And so I took that and I went back and I readjusted. I'm like, that's so much better than the line I originally wrote. I went back and readjusted it so that it was just that, and it worked so much better. I love that moment with Carrie. I was really great memory of just sitting with her and talking through what was going through her head in that moment. Felt important to just give a moment of quiet for Leia. And so much of Leia's thing in this movie, I felt like here's a character who has basically experienced just loss after loss after loss throughout the course of these movies. I thought it would be nice to acknowledge that and to actually give her some moments where you can feel the weight of the world and see her actually kind of break by the end of this. I thought, the character, I think, could be a really powerful thing and something that, to see her actually bearing that weight seemed important, and Carrie really tapped into it. This is Amanda Lawrence, who, amazing, wonderful British actor who I saw in a play, and initially we just put her in a tiny. Initially she had almost nothing more than what you just saw there. It was just like one little line, and then I just loved her so much. I just kept giving her more things to do. And then I gave her that whole speech introducing Holdo, and I just kept her around. I just wanted to have her around during the shoot because she was so cool, and I just loved her on screen. So I just kept adding to her part, basically.
That's impossible.
There's a whole scene in the deleted scenes where you see Poe give Finn the jacket back, and it explains kind of the stitches in it. So if you're curious about how his jacket got back to him, check out the deleted scenes. The best advice I got from anyone was from JJ's editors before we started making this movie. Marianne Brandon and Mary Jo Markey, they both told me, in every single scene, just shoot a cutaway of BB-8 and you'll never regret it. And we did, and my editor Bob Doucet and I, we said a thank you to Marianne and Mary Jo almost every day in the editing room. Tally is played by Hermione Corfield, and there's my buddy Noah Segan in his brief cameo. I'll also cop to the fact that we just re-recorded that bit because I said Hermione Granger the first time I said it, so sorry, Hermione. But she plays Tally. So these space battle scenes were obviously they're entirely digital stuff outside, and the process of shooting them was interesting. I basically started just by storyboarding them the way I always do, but then I took those storyboards and sat down with the previs guys, who are basically previs is where you make a very rough digital animated version of each shot. It kind of looks like an Xbox game. And so I would sit down, translate the boards into previs, and then cut the sequence together, and then work with Bob Doucet, our editor, on dramatically making the sequence all fit. It was a new process for me. It was my first time working with previs and working with that whole system. It was quite interesting. for example, this shot was something wasn't in it originally, and we realized we need to be able to get a sense of the geography and what's happening with the shields, and so we added that shot in and kind of created it in post. And then this moment between Adam and Carrie, I think Carrie just gives such a beautiful performance there, and we put in a couple of these little, I think they're 3-frame dissolves to kind of mirror the moment in Empire where Luke connects up with Vader. And Adam really beautifully rides this moment of the connection with his mom. And then this was a big practical explosion that ILM then took over. And this kind of intimate performance in a cockpit setting, it's really tough to do. I mean, you're sitting in this kind of uncomfortable chair, and inevitably I can't be right up by the camera because of the rig, and so I'm back by the monitor, like talking you through it with a microphone or something. And when you see actors giving really beautiful stuff in a cockpit, that's a real challenge.
Let's at least remind them that we're still here.
Very good, sir.
Anytime Adrian Edmondson is on screen in a shot, even just in the background, next time you watch the movie, just keep your eyes on him. He's always doing some fun little eye roll or something. So this scene was, I felt like this was something that Kathy Kennedy would bring up, the notion that Leia is a Skywalker as well, and she's got that same heritage. And there's the line in, Jedi where Luke says someday, you've got these powers too. And we never see him manifest. And the notion that in a moment like this, when it seems like all is lost, and she just realizes, she's not done yet. And almost through instinct, almost like you hear about parents when their kids are caught under cars being able to get Hulk strength and lift them up. That's kind of what I wanted this moment to be, with her using the Force kind of for the first time in these movies to pull herself back and to say, we're not done. This is not ending here.
Lifetime's a week, but she's fighting.
I love this little shot. I remember getting this. This was fun to get. And this notion, this was something in the writing that came kind of late, this idea of this beacon to connect up Rey and Finn. We were always trying to figure out ways. I was very conscious of the fact that they were split up for this movie. And I knew that was necessary, but I was always looking for ways to connect them, and this notion of this beacon. So, so Jonas Suetamo, I apologize, Jonas, if I massacred your last name there, but he's just the lovely Jonas to me. He performs Chewbacca in this film, and this scene in particular, I mean, you're underneath a big carpet to communicate these little comedic beats with the clarity that he does. It's really a skill, and he's a young actor. He was a basketball player, and he kind of got pulled into this, and I think he just acquitted himself admirably. And he can't eat the porgs at the end of the day. He just can't do it. That was my hand that pulled the dice down also. That's my cameo in the movie. Just ruining all the magic here. And we didn't... it's funny, I wrote that whole bit with the dice, and I worked the dice into this movie, and when I did, there was still, originally in The Force Awakens, when Han comes into the Falcon for the first time in the cockpit, he pulls the dice out of his pocket and hangs them up. And it was in the script, and they shot it, and it didn't end up making it into the movie. But I didn't know that while I was writing this. They were still shooting it, and so I put this whole dice thing in. But I figured, well, if Luke comes in, and even though it's a pretty obscure callback to these dice that you glimpse in one quick shot in The Force Awakens, or I was in A New Hope, I think, I figured, well, he pulls the dice down, you'll know they're Han's dice. You'll know they mean something. This was pretty amazing. We found the original footage of the original plate that they shot for Carrie doing the hologram from A New Hope. We're able to use it here. And again, Ren Clace, our sound designer, took the audio from it and transferred it to tape, and then like took it down the back and stomped on it in the gravel and got it all kind of messed up in a very organic way. And Mark's reaction to that, I just think it's so beautiful.
3 lessons. I will teach you the ways of the Jedi.
I think Mark and Daisy just played so well off of each other in this movie. Thank God, because they got quite a lot to do together. It's funny, one of the tough things in this was we had a lot of shots where we had to communicate huge ships moving very fast through space. Here's Amanda again, Mandy. And that was tough. It's tough to communicate huge ships and communicate speed without either undercutting their mass or, without any kind of reference object in space. It's tough to do. So we ended up trying to kind of move the camera quickly past them and move particulate through space, even though it doesn't really make sense. Dennis Murin was, works at ILM, and he goes back to the original film. He's a legend, and we were lucky enough to have him there for a lot of our effects reviews, and he gave a lot of tips on how to do that. Here's the legendary Laura Dern, who, God bless her, didn't flinch when I said let's go with purple. The character of Holdo was interesting. It developed quite a bit in the editing. We went back and did a couple pickup shots actually also, even with this speech, to kind of tweak the performance a little. Originally, she was a much more kind of like hippy-dippy sort of, I don't know, I had this idea that she would be just the opposite of what you'd expect from kind of a military leader stepping up there. And that's still the case with her. She still has a very, feminine energy, and she's got, she doesn't have the traditional kind of gruff male energy that that you've come to associate with, with military leadership. And so, the fact that she's leading in a different mode, and that, how people would react to that was something that was very interesting to me. But our initial take on it that Laura and I kind of did, it was too much, and she was a little too, she's a little too spacey. And so we went back and kind of got a slightly stronger take, but I think it still has that initial energy we were going for with it. And she and Oscar they adored each other. It was just so much fun working with these two. They got along so well, and there's a lot of dialogue that got cut out here where there's even more kind of back and forth banter between them that, it's a sort of thing where you always end up having to cut the stuff you love out of a movie just to keep the thing on track. So here comes John. Been so patient waiting for some good Finn stuff in the movie, and now we're about to get it. I really loved the notion that, he's left the First Order, the character of Finn, but he hasn't really joined the Resistance. Everything he does in The Force Awakens, even like taking him to the Starkiller base, it's not to help the Resistance, it's to help Rey. He always acts out of personal and not ideological motivations. So the idea of that's exactly what he's doing here. He's trying to save his friend. He's not in it to save the bigger cause. He's like, this is how I help Rey. I get this beacon away from here, and so she'll be safe when she comes to find it, because this place is doomed. Kelly Marie Tran as Rose. Kelly, we went through a really exhaustive, one of these horrible, exhaustive casting processes. And I say horrible not for us. I got to meet just a ton of hugely talented actors, but it's always painful when you meet a ton of hugely talented actors. End up only casting one. You just want to cast all of them. But Kelly ended up being, when I met her and got to know her, she is Rose. She has just beautiful, bright spirit, and it ended up informing the character in more ways than one. Originally Rose was kind of, I had thought of her more as like a grumpy sort of Eeyore type. And once we got Kelly in the part, and her spirit just started to infect it, and even this thing where she's like a fan of Finn's, this was a fairly late rewrite. This is one of the few scenes I rewrote during production. And I rewrote it. Originally, she was much more suspicious of Finn, and I rewrote it to more reflect Kelly's spirit and her personality. I was like, oh, no, she'd be excited and a fan. And then this genuine disappointment when she realizes this hero of hers is not who she thought. A much more open-hearted kind of character that, is very, very much a reflection of Kelly. This little move she does. I love it. So there's the beacon again, just kind of connecting us back up again. Anything we can do to kind of keep Rey and this whole story connected. So anytime I could find a place to do the beacon, I would. This whole sequence, I was always nervous about when we got in the cutting room, because it's really, it's exposition. It's like explaining what the plan is. And I know to a certain extent that's fun, but I also knew that we had a big chunk of it here. We had to also kind of do this scene where, I could very easily in my head picture the bad part of the scene where it's like, wait, back up. What did you just say? We can do that, So I think it's a real testament to the actors, both Kelly and John, and then also in the next scene, Oscar and Anthony, that they pulled this off. And I'm never bored watching these scenes. And I've seen these scenes a lot. Back in the background in the cell, then I like the notion that Kelly's already zapped a few guys and put them away. But depending on what take you're watching, that's either my buddy Daryl Fry, or from high school, is a good friend of mine, or Nathan Johnson, my composer. It's either one of those two back in the cell, depending what take we use. And this set is it's just really beautiful. This was actually I know I've said like 5 times so far. I think this was the first shot we did in the movie. This was the first real proper scene that we shot, like dialogue scene with the main actors. And I have such great memories of this day because it was this relatively small little contained set, and we just got this dialogue between all of these folks. And it just kind of popped and crackled, and it just felt like, okay, we're making a Star Wars movie. Anytime I would line it up and Anthony, Daniels as C-3PO would be in the shot, I would just think, oh my God, we're really making a Star Wars movie here. There's our little cutaway of BB-8. Thank you again. And I love this little beautiful moment with Carrie. Although to break the magic, in that shot of Poe, if you go back and watch it, we did like a cheat, and the height didn't make sense with John and with Anthony in the background. They're actually raised up on apple boxes, on like boxes like 3 feet in the air, so that if you look at them, their heads are up near the ceiling in that shot, but you never notice. Although now you do, because I just ruined it. You're welcome, Blu-ray customers. So I got to work with Lupita tragically shortly on this. This was just one day of work with her. She's so wonderful. I love this character of Maz. In early drafts of the script, there was more Maz in it. Originally, I had her actually on the cruiser, and I just slowly found as I was writing it that so much of the stuff I had her doing, especially as the script got bigger and bigger, I could be more economical if gave those beats to our main characters. And so Maz ended up being having this one very pivotal and I think really fun scene. But I wish I could have worked with Lupita more. But I think she's great, especially that line. And then. Yeah, this idea of like this orb where it's almost like a GoPro camera that's strapped to her. It's an odd little concept they had fun with. And then this jetpack thing was a very last minute idea in one of the effects reviews. I thought, oh, she flies off on a jetpack, and it got a laugh from the room. So I thought, well, try it. And once again, we cut to Rey on the beacon, just trying to cement that connection to create the illusion of a connection between these two stories happening a galaxy away. So these force connections when I was writing the script, I knew that I needed Kylo and Rey. I wanted to delve more into that relationship. I didn't see a way to do it physically. I didn't see how I could get them together without having some contrived thing where, like, she's being held hostage and then she can't be, or he's the island and then there has to be a physical confrontation. So I just wanted to make them talk. So I thought of the idea of this, okay, what if a new kind of connection opens between them? And then we had to figure out what it would look like. And there were all these visual ideas for, okay, what could this connection look like? And I just kept thinking, I want it to just be intimate. I don't want any kind of, swirling magical kind of thing. I don't want it to be about the effect of how they're looking at each other. I want it to be painfully intimate, just like you're sitting across from someone and talking. And so that's why I thought, can we get away with just using film grammar, just using the notion that when you cut back and forth between shots like this, we're trained to think that these two people are in the same space talking to each other. And especially if we, once we kind of got in the mixing stage, and again, working with Rian Kleiss, came up with this pretty extreme notion of dropping all the sound out except for their voices to isolate them. Can we get away with this? And we didn't really know while we were shooting it. It wasn't until we got in the edit room that we were like, I think this is going to work. And it works, obviously, because of the performances that Mark and Daisy that Adam and Daisy are giving. And they, obviously, anytime we shot these scenes, we basically shot each of the scenes twice, because when we were out in Ireland shooting this part of it, Adam was there in Ireland just so he could be off camera filming this with Daisy, and Daisy was on the set with him on the on the Snoke Star Destroyer set, shooting the other half of the conversation. So we would always basically shoot it twice, but they were always actually performing, obviously, off the other actor. Which was really vital. This is another tiny little bit that we got actually on Skellig, this little bit of walking up the steps. And then we're into, and this also, this has got a little bit of ILM work to it to make it look like a big, slightly different than the actual Skellig. So we're back into another amazing Rick Heinrichs set, which is... this was another amazing kind of 360-degree set, the interior of this, with this beautiful tiled mosaic in this pool, which is just gorgeous. We actually repurposed that set for the interior for kind of like the mirror cave water section. We just filled it up with water, and it also serves as that set. And then this whole sequence out on the ledge, this because of how intimate this dialogue was going to be, and for a lot of reasons, for safety reasons, we actually didn't shoot this part out in Ireland. This is, we shot plates, and then this is our amazing folks at ILM putting Ireland out back there for this whole scene. And this scene, I felt like it was important if we were going to have a couple of these kind of, topsy-turvy lessons where Luke is trying to teach her why not to be a Jedi, but why the Jedi need to end. The notion of approaching a Force lesson. What is the Force? And the notion of, especially for kids who are watching this, of kind of explaining that what Mark says in this, the Force is not a superpower. It's not like, it's not just about making things float. It's not like a Iron Man type, superpower that you get. Or Iron Man doesn't have superpowers. I know. Iron Man's suit does everything, but it's not like a Superman thing. And the notion of trying to explain sort of more in a gentler kind of more spiritual way, do a version of an explanation of the Force, do a little bit of a reset on it, I thought was could be something that would be really good. And I think Mark is just tremendous in this scene, and I think Daisy is amazing. It might be the longest single shot in the movie, this one that's coming up, where we just push in slowly on Daisy's face, and what she's doing and where she's going is just amazing. Jaron Prasant, who's a good friend of mine, who has shot second unit for Steve and I, going back all the way to Brick. He shot second unit on this, and he got all of those little cutaways of the island. That was all Jaron. But this shot right here, I love the symmetry of it, and I think Daisy is just fantastic in it.
This is the lesson. That force does not belong to the Jedi.
This was another thing similar to the cockpits, because they were actually up on this big ledge shooting it. It's another thing where I couldn't be up right there next to them, and so I was kind of directing from far away. So the fact that all this incredibly beautiful, intimate acting is happening, and I'm basically directing them through a megaphone, just a testament to these actors. These cutaways are in Ireland. This is this amazing location that we found. That's gorgeous, and we kind of added the hole in, but that natural kind of like basin actually existed. And then this shot right here, we actually, at the very end of the day, we did this rig where we had a trash can full of water. We suspended it above Daisy's head, and we just dumped all the water on her head, and then we ran it backwards. And she loved it. She was so into it after a full day of acting away to just get basically dunked by a huge thing of water. And that was the last shot of the day. That was, I was nervous asking her to do that, but she was so into it. That was a treat. And again, I love their performance here. And you can see that mosaic back behind Mark there a little bit. There's another thing where we're trying to communicate movement with these massive ships, and also draw your eye to the little escape thing.
Nothing, Admiral. Passing debris.
And Billy Lord as Connix. It's Harry Connix Jr. And this tiny little set, we originally had a few more beats that happened in it that I think will be in the deleted scenes, but very little of it is in the movie right now. And I love Chewie's little developing relationship with the porgs and this little beat. We almost cut that out a number of times, a little baby porg, but every time we would show the movie to Kathy, I would hear her giggle. And so I always thought, oh, it's doing something. Let's leave it in. So this is another example of the Force connections. This is actually shot in London with Daisy, and this is shot on a soundstage in London with Adam. But again, they were both actually still there. We were shooting it. They were never not off camera for each other when we were doing these scenes, obviously. It was always, it was always kind of, it was always the first thing I wanted to see when I got in the edit room was these scenes. And while we were shooting, I would actually go, it's the first time that I've ever made a movie where I've had to, just for schedule-wise, be assembling the edit during the actual shoot and really working on it. So after the day of shooting, I would go in Pinewood. Bob had a edit room all set up, and would go and sit together and watch some scenes. And whenever one of these came up, it was always a treat because it was kind of like, you know, is the magic trick going to work, basically? And that shot from behind Daisy, we shot in Ireland. We got a piece of the Falcon out there. Actually shot those scenes looking out to the sea with her, but everything looking back at her is in London.
Codebreaker, we get out.
You know this town? Canto Bight?
So yeah, you can see in the deleted scenes there's an extra beat of business that originally happened in here between the two of them. Originally BB-8 was like stowed away in the bathroom, and that's my cameo is the voice of the jerk alien on the rich yacht. This is a gorgeous ILM shot. And Canto Bight. So the notion of doing kind of a, you know, very glamorous Monte Carlo inspired Star Wars city where the 1%ers come was a very early thing in the writing process that I had. thought it would be interesting. But I'm going to pause real quickly from that and talk about this shot. This is inspired by a shot in that silent movie, Wings, and it's an amazing shot that goes over the top of all these tables. And we were trying to figure out how to kind of take in the breadth of all this amazing design and just kind of be overwhelmed visually by the casino. And we had done all these other shots. We're panning around it, but never quite got it. And then Steve Yedlin and I kind of figured out how to do this shot. We didn't really have the equipment we needed to do it, though. Really, what you would do in that shot, if you had what you needed, would be a large techno crane. It's called basically a big crane with a telescoping arm. And if you have a long enough one, you can just telescope the arm straight out. It's like a turtle poking his head out, basically, just out over the scene. But we didn't have one of those on that day, and so Steve built this amazing thing where it was 2 dollies on either side with a piece of truss going between them, and that the camera was suspended on the truss. And so basically this thing is zipping through the whole scene, and all the actors immediately after the camera passes them have to duck so they don't get plomped on the head by the piece of truss. It's a pretty amazing rig, and it ended up being, we shot all this additional B-roll and all these other shots of the casino, and once we saw that one, we were like, wow, that's kind of all we need. That's just the setup for it.
My sister and I grew up in the mining system.
This scene was actually one of the few pickups that we did to get them out on the balcony and looking at the little kid. This was just wanting to kind of like set the kids up in advance and wanting to get them out. Originally, this scene played out kind of them looking through a window in the casino, and it just didn't have the connection we needed. So we went back and picked it up again. I think Kelly's there's a really beautiful moment here, and you can really see John listening to her and taking this in. The whole notion of John's kind of journey through this movie would be, that Kelly would kind of be an angel on her shoulder, that Rose would be an angel on John's shoulder, and DJ, who we're going to meet soon, would be kind of the devil. And it's, again, in that kind of, here's Justin Theroux, who is so sweet. Justin Theroux and Lily Cole on the left, and they came in for one day to do this little cameo as James Bond and Mrs. Bond, I guess. Also, when you watch the casino things, if you just look at the faces in the background, we got Michael Kaplan, who I'm mentioning way too late in this commentary because he did the costumes for this film and also for The Force Awakens and also for Blade Runner, a little movie called Blade Runner, and Fight Club. He's a legend, and the casino was a real challenge. I mean, trying to come up with, because I gave him a couple of restrictions. I told him I wanted it to just be black and white, the color scheme of all the costumes. And I told him I wanted it to not be Baroque. I didn't want it to be sci-fi or elegant. I want it to be just elegant. I told him, for the guys at least, I want it to be the equivalent of an Armani tux, but in the Star Wars world. He just did amazing work, but he also worked closely with the casting for all the extras, and Michael just went through and found just amazing background actors with incredible looks and faces and figures. And next time you watch the movie, just keep your eyes on all the faces in the background. It's pretty incredible. This was another bit that we got on Skellig. We spent few hours of our precious time there shooting this whole scene, and this is a real landmark on Skellig. It's called the Wailing Woman, and this rock, obviously we could not slice it in half for real. That's an effect, so it's still there if you go out to Skellig. Originally there was more intercutting between all the storylines, between the island and Poe with the Resistance and Finn's mission. Originally, we hopped back and forth a lot more frequently between them. It was a really interesting thing for me as we started getting into the cutting and putting the whole movie together and feeling it out, realizing that that was actually detracting from the experience, and that it was a good thing, I think, that once you were with these stories, you wanted to kind of play them out for longer. It's funny, I would have expected that, and obviously in the writing, I thought that hopping back and forth between the stories would keep the energy up and keep us invested in each of them. Things are never quite what you expect when you get in the other room. Mark's performance here is so beautiful. I keep saying that, but I just keep watching. I just find it hard to keep talking. I'm just watching him perform, especially this moment here. He's talking about Leia. Daisy as well. Steve's lighting in this scene, with this kind of golden light coming through, and Rick's set.
By the time I realized I was...
So I knew I wanted to do a flashback. There are never flashbacks in Star Wars movies, so I knew that we were kind of breaking from the norm here. There's rarely flashbacks, I should say, but I knew I wanted to go back and see Kylo and Ben when they were, sorry, Kylo and Mark when they were first training, and I also, though, I mean, so I went back and forth, like, do we show a full training montage? Do we show a whole scene where we see kind of his corruption? Do we see, how much of this do we want to actually watch? And kind of landed on, well, I feel like it would be too much of a tangent to do a full, especially given the breadth of the movie that we're trying to accomplish. It would be too much to go back and see all of this. So let's go back to just the moment that really matters specifically to Luke's character, which is the moment of his failure. Because ultimately, this whole construction that Luke has in his head about the good of the universe and everything is kind of it all comes down to this personal feeling of, he's failed this kid because of his hubris. And so, that moment and the notion then of that came kind of late in the writing process of doing this Rashomon style 3 versions of it, where you see a slightly different version each time, seemed like it had promise. And I think Mark's performance and the voiceover in that whole scene, combined with his performance on screen when he's considering whether or not to, when he's looking down at Kylo that's coming up later, it's a really beautiful piece of work. Here again, big ships, and this was something we worked on a lot in post-production also, was figuring out how to really make the geography of this clear and make clear what the threat was. Some of those scenes on the bridge with Hux and Peavy and this little bit here, this whole little sequence, some of this, again, were a few of our relatively sparse reshoots where we went back and kind of got these little pieces to try and really clarify for the audience what the threat was, that this is basically like a slow speed chase. They're in a little bit of a stalemate, but they're running out of time, and it's only a matter of time before the bad guys are able to blast him out of the sky. The beautiful ILM shot. This is Andy Nyman. It's my buddy Andy Nyman, who's a terrific actor and also a very talented magician who's playing the main cop, Canto Bight cop. And here comes DJ. So Benicio del Toro is one of my very favorite actors in the world, and I feel like he just always defies your expectations when he's on screen. And the notion of throwing him into this part, I knew he was going to do something I didn't expect. And on one hand, when you're making your first studio movie, and a big Star Wars movie is a little scary. On the other hand, it's very exciting. And the way that he played this character, and this little kind of, this little kind of like stuttery hitch in his speech that he found, and the weirdness of it, it ended up just, I think, being so perfect. Yeah, he's got a real sort of, reminds me of the fox in Pinocchio a little bit. And that's sort of his role in this. Again, this is sort of a DJ on one shoulder of Finn and Kelly and Rose on the other, saying, fight for the good fight, and the other one saying, it's all a big corrupt machine, it doesn't matter. And that's something that's maybe, a little different than what we've kind of seen in Star Wars movies before, but it felt like something that would be very interesting to, even in kind of a simplified way in this film, to explore. This set was a fun example of doing a lot with a little. This is basically just one hallway that we had, and we kind of, the way they did in the original films a lot, we just kind of shot it in a bunch of ways to really stretch it out. And then this gag with the coins, they actually came up with a real rig that shot out coins from BB-8. I think we gave it a little bit of help with ILM at the end of the day. But also that smoke, that was, they actually somehow had like a little thing in BB-8 where he practically blew the smoke where he looked down. And again, Jaron Prasant, our second unit guy, shot that, and it was quite cool. It's an example of a transition where originally we went from there back to another storyline and then came back here and picked this up here. And this was another thing where we just realized now we got to stick with this. And so just did a wipe from manhole to manhole. Practical creature right here. This is Neil Scanlon, who was our creature supervisor, made all these amazing creatures. For this shot, for example, we actually just locked the camera down and shot the Fathier in the closer position, and then cut and moved it to the second one and shot it, and cut and moved it to the third one. And so it's actually, it's kind of like a big multi-split screen, but they're all practical creatures. And the creature work that Neil did throughout the whole movie is extraordinary. The Fathier in particular, the combination of Neil's work and ILM's, but for those shots where he's first looking over the gate, it's entirely practical, and it's just gorgeous, I think. And then here is our big Fathier chase, which is a huge, elaborate sequence to plan out and to shoot. The last 2 weeks of the shoot, basically, were, Kelly and John basically on this rig where the way they did it, ILM, they basically planned out the animation. They worked out the anatomy of the Fathier, like the bones of it and how it moved. They planned out the animation for how it would actually be running. And then we worked out the camera moves for each of these. And then they basically made this motion base that Kelly and John were on, and that they programmed the move exactly into it with the camera move exactly on a motion control camera to come around it. And then shot by shot with each one of these, we just shot their elements for it. So basically the last 2 weeks of the shoot were Kelly and John stuck on the back of this big, contraption, just shooting reaction shot after reaction shot. So this is a practical set right here that we actually, big hydraulic thing smashed through. Chris Corbold, our effects supervisor, accomplished that. But then a shot like this, so ILM is doing the Fathiers in it. These are plates that we shot in shots of running down the street in Dubrovnik, which is a beautiful city in Croatia. It's got this gorgeous kind of polished stone. If you can ever go to Dubrovnik, I highly recommend it. And so we shot plates in Dubrovnik that ILM kind of accentuated with some, additional extensions, and then put the Fathiers in, and it's a combination of practical explosions we had in the streets of Dubrovnik and ILM's work. And then this, for example, is a combination of some digital work with also this black sand beach that we shot plates of in Iceland. And then once we get up here, this is the environment, and the Fathiers are entirely digital. And this is just John and Kelly on their motion rig, zipping by.
Where'd they go?
And this is the most obscure Young Ones reference ever put into a Star Wars movie. And then here for their kind of final moment here. Originally, we had an extra little beat between Kelly and the Fathier That's another example of a shot of the practical Fathier right there, and just the amazing creature work that those guys were able to get into it. And then that's the ILM version walking off. There's another little moment of the angel on his shoulder of Kelly and him seeing kind of the merits of someone who's actually fighting the good fight. The sleek ship here is another Kevin Jenkins, who I've mentioned a few times. It's his work.
Oh! I didn't need a left?
So you'll see, this is interesting. You'll see in your deleted scenes, they're originally at the end of the big lesson inside the temple. There was a whole other scene where essentially, Luke kind of does a teachable moment with Rey, where he makes her think that the caretaker village is getting attacked, and she like runs down there to help them. And it turns out they're not actually in danger, and he was just using it as a lesson, and she gets very angry and kind of yells at him. And originally it left, it left them in kind of like a bad place, and we ended up lifting that out entirely. And it was one of those interesting things in the edit room where you lift something huge that you thought was vital out, and then connect the two pieces back up, and realize it works in a slightly different way, but it still works. Adam Driver, ladies and gentlemen.
Do you have something
Looking good.
you could put on?
There's another example of this is actually, God bless Daisy, it was freezing, and we were actually out on the coast of Ireland. This was shot at twilight. We had like a 20-minute window to shoot this scene with her when the light was just right. And it was freezing, and she just did take after take, and Adam is right off camera, and she's talking to him, but, we had a very limited amount of time to shoot this, and she just nailed it, and the emotion that she brings to it, I think is extraordinary. The set that Adam is in, it's kind of, we repurposed a little bit his medical chamber set and added a few extra elements, but there was this concept drawing that, I forget who did the concept painting, one of our great designers, and it had a real Blade Runner vibe to it, and I thought, that'd be really fun to see. So here's Kylo's version of, we shot all these flashbacks in one day in this little set, half a day, I think, and this is Kylo's version of it, where he tells her that he woke up, saw Luke about to kill him, defended himself, which I don't think he's lying, actually. In my mind, that was his experience, It's actually Luke who was really distorting the truth when he left out the stuff in his first telling of it. But, I think that it's probably twisted a little bit by Kylo's own anger and his own prejudices against Luke. But I feel like he's actually telling her the truth of his experience in this communication. So the mirror cave scene here, this was a very early kind of like image that I had. One of the first things I did when I got the job initially, I met with a couple of people. I had lunch with Larry Kasdan, which was really important for me. And obviously I sat down with JJ, talked to Michael Arndt. I also went out to Malibu, and I spent a couple of weeks hanging out with Rick Carter. And Rick Carter is kind of an unseen Yoda behind this kind of sequel trilogy. He worked on Force Awakens. He's a production designer who Kathy Kennedy has a long history with, and he's a really amazing guy. And Rick and I just spent a couple of weeks. I would go down there, a few times a week, and we would walk down the beach and just have these long talks. And it was one of the very first things I did when I first got the gig. And if you know Rick, you know that when you're talking with him about story, you aren't talking about you aren't talking about action scenes. You're not talking about set pieces. You're not talking about toys. You're talking about what matters to you in the story. And you're talking about, the mythic stuff behind it all, and images that matter to you, and what it means to you, how it relates to your experience, and really digging into stuff that's very personal. And for that to be the first real conversation I had with anybody about the movie, to start it off on that foot of, we're going to dig in and figure out what matters to you in this, and to have the permission to start there, I guess, was really, really important. And then Rick really, really gave that to me. And this image of in the mirror cave of Rey searching for identity and having this kind of vision where, it's all about finding herself, and there's all these versions of her going down the line, this infinite number, and which one am I, and where is it going to end? How am I going to end up? And is this going to define me? There's all these possibilities of what I can be, and I'm trying to find them, which is, for me, that's adolescence. And to some extent, these movies, obviously, famously, Lucas kind of drew from the hero's journey and that whole myth that Joseph Campbell wrote about in making the first Star Wars. Well, the hero's journey is not about becoming a hero. It's not about becoming, Superman. It's if you really look at it, I think it's about, the transition from childhood into adulthood. It's about adolescence. It's about finding your place in the world, finding who you are. You have these powers in you, and who's going to help you find the right way to use them. And that's really Rey's journey in this. And I think that's something all of us can relate to. And then this, obviously, very critical connection between the two of them here. The transition of Kylo from someone who killed Han Solo and is kind of coming into it, I kind of felt like I had to assume, even though I found the character very intriguing, you have to come in with, that's why Rey is so angry with him and just saying screw you for basically the first few Force connections, is because my assumption is that's how we're going to feel about him coming into this movie, and how to transition him slowly from there to here in a way that was plausible through Rey's eyes. The notion that Rey sees this opportunity in him, and maybe sees something more than that in him, and to earn this connection, I guess. That was something that was something we spent a lot of time, Adam and Daisy and I, kind of talking through how we were gonna get there. This is a practical shot. That's not a CG hut blowing apart. I'm sure in one of the behind the scenes docs we show it, but this was pretty amazing. We did this in just a shot where they had this thing rigged to kind of pull on strings all this, fake hut and blow this wall apart behind Mark. And we pulled the camera back, and Adam kind of scampered out of the way, and then we pushed back to reveal he's no longer there. And I remember we were shooting all night. We were shooting all this stuff all night long, and that was going to be the last shot that we got. And it was like, 4:30 in the morning, and the sun was about to come up. And we ran, and we were like, the sun's coming up, the shot's going to be ruined. And we got that shot. And I remember everyone was just kind of on a big high after it. So even though this actually isn't in Ireland, for all the night stuff, we had to recreate the set on the back lot at Pinewood for the night and the rain and the lighting that we needed. We couldn't shoot it out in Ireland, but it was still, we're in England at night with rain pouring down, and Daisy is just, you'd see what she's wearing. She was freezing, and she just gave her all in every single take. And beyond the amazing performances that she gives, just the physical exertion of the fight, I'm still amazed by it. So the performance I said earlier on, I remember we recorded the ADR for this, the voiceover for it, at Pinewood, and I remember just sitting with Mark, and he just read the lines over and over, and I feel him searching for something with this read. And we put it together in the edit room, and combined with his performance here, it just really sells this moment of brief temptation and then regret, which is really what this whole thing is about. So this appeal that she makes to him here, this was important. This felt like, you know, because I think for me, you know, Kylo, and everyone's gonna have their own read on it when they watch it. And by the way, I'm recording this before we've released the movie, so I haven't heard what anyone actually thinks about this. But for me, there is some kind of primal connection between Rey and Kylo. It has to do with, and there's the fact that even though they're on opposite poles, and he's kind of a, you know, hateful character, and she's a kind of this incredibly good character, the fact that they're both the only ones who have this power in the movie, and they're kind of on these two opposite islands, there's some connection between them. Beyond that, though, I needed her to have an actual viable justification for why should we go and think that she can turn him, and to lay out for Luke, if I do that, this could actually win the day. So that scene felt very, very important to me. Speaking of scenes that feel very important to me, it just made sense that Yoda was going to show up in this movie at some point. And so this shot, by the way, was Frank Oz's idea. Originally, I forget, I had some more boring way of introducing Yoda, but he came up with the notion of just kind of like dollying back behind Yoda's head and seeing the shape of it to reveal him, and knowing that instantly everyone's heart would jump. So, I mean, getting to work with Frank Oz, who is an incredible performer. And he, by the way, so this is the, you know, again, Neil Scanlon and his team, they found the original mold for Yoda. They recreated the puppet from Empire. There's no digital Yoda here. This is entirely practical, and it's all Frank puppeteering it and performing it. We added kind of the little glow around him, but he's actually there on the set doing it. And they even found the lady who painted Yoda's original eyes, and she was still working in London, and they've tracked her down and got her to repaint the eyes for Yoda. But getting to work this night with Frank and Mark, and Frank was down there all night long in the hole with the puppet performing it. I mean, it was such a treat. And beyond that, I mean, Frank is also, I mean, he's an incredible director, and I love his films. And beyond his live action stuff, obviously, he's had years of experience, working with puppets and working with them as a filmmaker. So when we got in the cutting room, I actually brought Frank in and showed him the scenes and the scene, and he was able to give some incredibly helpful tips, even just in terms of editing, how to cut around with a puppet, and where to cut to a wide shot and where to let it hold. And he gives some really important insights into how to make this play, and how to make it feel like the real deal. But God, yeah, you can't. I mean, this was just another one of those experiences on set where you look through the monitor and you know, what is just a hunk of foam rubber, suddenly Frank starts operating it, and it just comes to life, and it's real. It's really magical. And also the other lesson that, you know, Frank taught me was that Mark's reaction is a massive part of what brings the puppet to life. The actor who's with him believing this living, interacting with this living creature, and Mark's eyes are as important as Yoda's eyes in this scene. It was a pretty special experience to get to do this, and to get to become friends with Frank during the course of it.
What they grow beyond. That is the true burden of all masters.
And meanwhile, back in space, so this whole thing of DJ asking for the medallion and then giving it back, this is actually something that started with an idea from Benicio when we were talking about the character. I was very conscious of kind of the history of scoundrels in the Star Wars universe, and whether it's Han or whether it's Lando, we've kind of been conditioned to always see them come around and see the light. And with DJ, I knew I didn't want that to happen. I wanted him to follow through and just stick to his guns and just completely sell the heroes out. So the notion of riding that a little bit and opening up his knowing that we were going to do that, opening up your sympathy for the character by having the moment of, oh, you think he's a jerk here, and then he turns it around and gives it back to her at the key moment. He actually needed it for something. It seemed very appealing. And that shot of all the coins, this is something for the true nerds in the audience. There are these computer games that were very important to me when I was growing up. Infocom games, or these text adventures, and Zork was the main one. And if you got the Zork game, you got this little Zork mid, which is a fake coin. And I've had this thing for years, and I stuck it in there amongst all the other coins. So there is a Zork mid in there. Yeah. The other thing that I really liked the idea with the DJ character was, having the opportunity to talk about to have him express this. It feels like it's something that is felt a little dangerous bringing it into the Star Wars world, but it felt right doing it. This kind of true cynicism of talking about kind of the machine behind war, bringing that in as something that Finn has to kind of weigh as he's considering, whether a fight is something he's going to commit to. This kind of perspective of none of it really actually matters. It's all just trying to make money. Obviously, Rose is kind of the antidote to that notion that there is actually stuff worth fighting for in the world. Mandy, I have great memories of shooting this scene. I also have great memories of this set because Oscar and Laura and I basically used this set as a rehearsal space. After a day of shooting, with other actors, I would come and sit with the script with Oscar and Laura, and we would sit kind of on these benches that go around the set, and we would go through their scenes and kind of work them out in the space. And more than shooting, every time I see this set, I think about just sitting around and gabbing with Laura and Oscar. I think Oscar is so good here. I mean, he's just... And I love that girl who backs away, that background actor. She gave a terrific little moment there. Every time we watch it in the edit room, we appreciated that little bit of acting. That's Caridad, who was Daisy's stand-in throughout the whole movie. We got her in there for a little close-up. I was very happy about the terrific actor, Caridad.
Finn, Holdo's loading the crew in the shuttle. She's going to abandon ship. Where are you?
So this was a... I love, by the way, this is from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Did you get my note? I got a note. That little moment. Yeah, I got a lot of Monty Python in this movie. I always get excited at this part in the movie because this is where all the kind of stuff starts lining up and starts coming together. This moment that's coming up where she launches out in this weird little escape pod and meets with Kylo's character. The design of this thing, first of all, I just kept pushing them to make it feel like a coffin. There was something about that image. There's a C.S. Lewis book that I was really into when I was in high school called Paralandra. It's part of his space trilogy, and the main character travels through space in a coffin. Maybe that's it. But this moment where she comes in and it opens and they see each other. My editor, Bob, and I, we kept trying to cut this moment out. We kept thinking, okay, we see her launch towards it, and forever in the movie we had cut that scene out, and we're just like, okay, and then we cut away to other stuff, and we come back and they're in the elevator, and you'll get it. It just felt like something like, do we need to see that? Do we really need to see that? And we slowly realized as we showed it to people, yeah, we really do need to see this moment. There's something about the first moment they see each other. So much so that we actually went back and again, that was one of our reshoots that we did. I mentioned a couple of them. But that was one of our reshoots, was picking up little reaction shots from both of them seeing each other for the first time.
So a stormtrooper and a who now? What?
And during this whole, all of this whole build up to the first initial climax where Rose and Finn get caught, which is what this whole mutiny bit is leading to. Another example of a section of the movie where originally the intercutting was much different, the way it was written and originally shot. And in the edit room, we constructed these boards where we had just a card with a single photo from each scene on it, and we had them up in order, and they were on Velcro so we could shift them around. There's our little reference to Hardware Wars. If anyone remembers Hardware Wars, but I was happy we got that in. Anyway, this was a section in the movie where we just were endlessly shifting the cards around. And right here, originally, and we are going to put this in the deleted scenes, this was originally a much more extended sequence of Finn and Rose and DJ working their way through the Star Destroyer, and it's one of my favorite little scenes in the movie. Actually, it was them kind of sneaking through a big office area and almost getting caught, and it was wonderful. But it was just a thing where when we put it all together, we just couldn't spend that long on this sequence, and so we kind of fabricated this other little segment and just got through it quicker. But once we get this, like I was saying, this whole section here, basically, it was just a lot of working it in post, a lot of shifting it around. I think there's sometimes the idea that, you come up with a plan or you have a vision or something and you make the movie and try and get it to match that. And the truth is, especially with something bigger and more, with any film, even with something like this that seems like it should be on big tracks and just like, you lay the foundation and build it. It's a very organic process throughout the whole thing. And big things change, big things shift around all the way through it, up through the cutting process and even up to the very end. Now we're back on my favorite set. I should mention that the inspiration for this, the red and the reflective floor, was a beautiful production of Madame Butterfly that the late great Anthony Minghella directed, and there was a visual in it that was similar to this. And when we were fishing around I knew I wanted like big theatrical red kind of curtains, basically, that were going to burn away later in the scene, but we couldn't quite visually figure out how to make it work. And at some point, I remembered the design in that opera, and I showed it to the guys, and kind of the pure field of red back there and the reflective black floor, very much a nod to that. So here's the moment where we think DJ may be okay. Suckers. Rose and Finn. Suckers. This is actually a little practical thing where they got the remote to pop out and John had to catch it. And it's attached to a little bit of acting where he gives that kind of slow burn reaction to her. Of course they are. And so, but it was always, whether he would catch it or not and whether it would fly out at the right angle was we ended up doing like 20 takes of it. And those guys had to nail that little bit over and over again. And eventually when we hit it, it was one of those things that just, you're like, oh, thank God, it worked. That was and there you can see Laura say pew when she fires the gun, which she could never not do every time she shot it. And I think it's still in there. If you look at her lips, you can see it. I had so much fun working with Anthony Daniels. He's such a gentleman, such a lovely guy. And also I love 3PO so much that we we're always trying to figure out more and more for him to do, and little lines for him to do, little moments for him to have. A lot of the really fun little bits that he has in this movie were the product of Anthony kind of sidling up next to me in between takes and saying, "What do you think of this and that?" And us going back and forth and coming up with, what we think would be funny for 3PO to get into here. Here's the big build up to them getting caught. And there's a Ralph who, in the white, who I mentioned earlier. He was originally a much bigger part of the whole sequence I mentioned that we lifted out where they were sneaking through the Star Destroyer, and you just glimpse him really briefly in the background there. He's a great, great actor. And of course, I'm very, very sad that his stuff isn't in the movie. But if you watch the deleted scenes, it's a terrific scene in the film. And then here is the reveal of Carrie. And originally this scene went on just a little bit longer. Originally, after he got blasted back and we had this, we cut back to Leia and you saw Holdo come out of the smoke behind her. But decided that kind of confused things, and so we just stepped on the gas.
Okay, help me push him up, guys.
You can see my little brother coming up here. He's about to walk down the ramp behind Carrie. This scene is one of my favorites, and Carrie and Laura and I got together and basically came up with this scene. There's my little brother. So this scene was always in the script, but I felt it was really important to get together with these two actors and really work out what the heart of it was. And this is where Laura, got to talk to Carrie about what the character meant to her over the years, and really wanting to pay tribute to what Princess Leia over the years has meant to her, just kind of, as a real person in the world growing up. And Carrie's, line, Hugo, I've said it enough, that was something Carrie came up with. And that whole moment was just kind of crafted around just getting together with these two amazing actresses over an afternoon and talking through what that moment should be. So my favorites in the movie. I always love watching it.
Come closer, child.
Andy Serkis is a force of nature. He's amazing. He's also just a gentleman and a scholar. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy. And his performance as Snoke is, for the longest time when we were showing rough cuts, we just left in Andy in the mocap suit until very, very late, until we had almost all of the effect shots done. That was the only point where we started showing it to people with the CG Snoke, just because Andy's performance was so powerful, and he's it was a real education getting to work with him, both in terms of the technical side of things with the motion capture aspect of it, but also just as an actor. I'm a super fan of the Mike Leigh movie Topsy Turvy, and so seen that movie a million times, and so Andy is in that movie in a fairly small part, but a really cool little part, and I knew all of his lines from that movie, like even the ones that he says like kind of off screen, and so I just kept quoting Topsy Turvy to him, and I think it started as charming. I think he ended up getting a little creeped out, like, wow, you really know that movie. These close-ups are just extraordinary. The work that ILM did in creating this photoreal but entirely digital character with his eyes, it's just really amazing. So that's a practical hand. That's like an actual creature foam rubber hand on Daisy, and that's a digital face on the left of Snoke. And the fact that they match up and you can't tell is extraordinary. And then Daisy, actually, we hefted up on wires for these shots, so she's like there and here also. She's in this horribly uncomfortable rig doing this really intense performing.
No.
And this little scene here always makes me happy. This is another one where similar to the stuff earlier I mentioned, kind of the explaining the plan stuff. I was worried about this scene because it's kind of in the middle of everything and all the stuff kind of starting to heat up, and it's kind of a stop and explain things scene. But again, just because of the actors in the scene, because it's Oscar kind of learning, as Poe kind of learning his lesson here, because it's Carrie bringing such kind of, guiding warmth to it. I guess I never feel like we're getting bored watching it, which is always the fear. And these guys really pull it off. And the payoff of the beacon. The kind of conflict between her and Poe, and the notion of there being kind of discord amongst the good guys in these tight quarters of this ship. It's almost owes more to Ronald Moore's version of Battlestar Galactica than to the original Star Wars. I felt like something that'd be interesting to kind of explore. So, in shooting this, obviously the massive hangar is largely an ILM creation. We kind of had the floor, and we had designs that Rick Heinrich's team had put together. And then ILM did an amazing job creating this huge space. Gwendolyn Christie, I haven't talked about yet. But she's one of my favorite people in the world. She's so sweet. And she's so much fun. And she was just like a little kid playing this part. It felt like, that costume is not easy, but it just seemed like she was putting on a Halloween costume every day she was on it. She was just so happy to put that on. And we just had so many conversations about what the voice should be like in different situations in this, and Phasma's kind of philosophy and everything. It was fun. These shuttles, it was fun because we built an internal set, and we actually built the shuttles with fully finished exteriors and fully finished interiors, so we could go from outside to inside them with the camera. You're going to see that coming up in a bit here. But that was really nice, and that gave us a lot of freedom with these scenes to really make you feel like these things are fragile things that are actually containing these people.
And obliterate the entire island.
So I love Snoke's gold outfit. I know I don't know how people are going to react to it. I know it's kind of a bold choice, but I really love it. I love the fact that he's not just in dark, evil robes, but that he's got a little bit of flair to him. I mean, the whole set speaks to him having a sense of the dramatic, and the notion that he's kind of physically weak, and so he uses theatricality to kind of cover that, and the notion of him being a little more glam. Michael Kaplan showed me that design, and I was just like, yes, make it gold, make it so. And the Praetorian Guards here, the design of these guys was interesting. One of my favorite designs in the original film is the Emperor's Guards. They're gorgeous, but they're very ceremonial. And with these guys, I knew they were going to have to actually fight. And so we built them to move. And they designed these amazing costumes that were kind of the way the plates were on the guys. The stunt performers could actually do like full battle in them. And they just look stunning. These close-ups here of Snoke and the power of those is fantastic. There's also something a bit we're trying to get a little bit of the Wizard of Oz hallway in here with the shape of those kind of that hallway going back to the elevator. Talked a lot with Adam about this moment, and he really wanted to hone in on what Kylo is thinking when he makes a decision, where his head is at coming in here. We took a lot of time trying to figure out, okay, he comes in, and my take was he comes into this moment he knows that Snoke can read his intentions, if not his mind, and so he can't be thinking actively about an opportunity, but he's got to be in the moment here. But at the same time, he's kind of looking for one. He was going to look for an opportunity to do something like this. And so that's his intent from the moment he walks in the scene, is to betray Snoke, but he doesn't quite know how to do it, and then he sees this opportunity and takes it. And talking through it beat by beat with Adam, it was great because it made me kind of define it for myself. And this was another very early image I had in my head, this kind of shot that's the red on red, and them slowly coming towards, and our heroes, this moment here, back to back, that moment. Something I was very excited about from the very early writing phases. Here's an example of the exterior interior set of the spaceship and the shuttle and the kind of shots it lets us do. I love this final line from DJ. This is not the line I wrote. This is a Benicio del Toro special. Originally, I had some dumb movie line like, yeah, I'm wrong and rich or something. And he's like, I think you should just say maybe. I was like, yes, you should just say maybe. It's perfect. I love it. Daisy and Adam trained their butts off. They, from early pre-production up through the day that we shot this, they were training for these fights, and they got so good at them, it gave me the freedom to just set the camera back and shoot them so you could actually see them doing the choreography, which was a real treat. It meant I didn't have to put a long lens on and shake the camera around because I wasn't going to have to cover kind of any kind of sloppy fighting. These guys were so dialed in, and the stunt performers who did the guards were the same, that I had the freedom to actually show them doing the fight. Like, the movies with the fight scenes in them that I grew up loving, like Jackie Chan movies or Jet Li, it's a similar thing where the performers, can just carry it. We did, that does also mean that they're doing big chunks of the fight for single takes, and that means that when you do multiple takes of it, it's just damn exhausting. And the fact that Adam and Daisy and all of our amazing stunt performers were able to keep up this intensity and sell these moments take after take with all the technical requirements, just extraordinary. That was a move that Rob Inch, our stunt coordinator, came up with, the notion of her getting out of that by dropping it. And then this was something I had the idea for. And when we shot that take, and it was a very last-minute idea of, what if we squirt some smoke into the hole in his mask? What would happen? And we did it, and as he's falling back, that wisp of smoke came out, and we were just like, oh, yes. This sequence, I think, and I apologize if it gets repetitive with me just saying, I think the actors are so good in the scene, but I think the actors are so good in the scene. Both Adam and Daisy, this is just such an intimate scene for there to be in the middle of all this chaos, and I just think they both are so vulnerable and wonderful in it, and the fact that, especially at the very end of the scene, in one way Kylo is doing the join me moment, but on the other hand, he had to be, especially at the end of the scene, it had to be genuinely vulnerable. It had to be much more like he's, making an emotional appeal. And you had to see that. And Adam, I think, got that so well. And Daisy is just so kind of shattered here and beautiful, her performance. And the notion of these little fiery, things falling in the background, fiery rain. This was something I had very early on in my head. It was always a really key part of the scene and of kind of the beauty of it. And it wasn't something we got in the effects until much later on, and so until much later in the process. So many times when I was watching this scene, I would be just like, I can't wait till we get the fiery rain in there. This moment right here, his please, always kills me. It's just very important. Meanwhile, back in space, it's another external, internal shot, exterior, interior. Laura's little moment right here. This whole thing of what she does here, and when Holdo kind of becomes the hero and does this smash through. It was an early idea of what. And by the way, Adrian's little reaction here, where he doesn't quite buy Hux's confidence, I love. Anyway, I'll talk about the Holdo thing in just a second, but I guess I should talk about this amazing little moment between these two. The notion here that they're equally matched, the idea here that they're true equals, and so when they both are going to reach for this thing, it is suspended exactly between them, even to the point where it's going to split perfectly in half. That was another thing that was, an early idea that I like, just the idea of communicating that just with that visual image. So these axes, these executioner weapons, Jamie Wilkinson, who did our props, designed these, and I really love them. The notion of, and then Michael Kaplan came up with the idea of the black kind of bar on those stormtroopers' helmets, to be kind of reminiscent of an executioner's hood. So this moment here of what Holdo's about to do, going through blasting through it, this was another very early thing where, we had heard about in these movies about if you don't do your calculations correctly, you could smash through a planet while you're, trying to go through hyperspace, and the idea of what would that look like. I didn't even after we shot it, once we got into post and started doing the sequence, I didn't really know. It was actually Ben Morris is our visual effects supervisor, and he worked with his team. And at some point, this idea of kind of turning the lights off and going to this weird subjective lighting, that came up. And once we saw that, and I always knew I wanted it to go silent, and then it's only when we cut back to the big wide that you suddenly get that piercing sound. But visually, once we struck on that idea, suddenly the sequence just kind of clicked, and we said, okay, the gravity of this, I think we're finally communicating here. So similar to when this was all in one piece, this is nearly all ILM. All the stuff on the ground is practical, and all the smoke in the air and all the flaming stuff. But everything up in the air, including the choreography of everything falling apart, is all ILM. So I knew I wanted to have BB-8 come out and kind of save the day in a walker. It was another one of our amazing ILM designers, James Klein, who drew this sketch of the chicken walker with its head torn off with BB-8 on it, and it just looked like BB-8 had legs. And it made me laugh. And so we figured out a way to rip the head off and have BB-8. BB-8 gets legs. And we originally, the way I storyboarded it, we made a lot more of BB-8 kind of like a little kid stomping around and kicking stuff around. Another one of those things where we just had to kind of stick with the action, stick with what matters here, which is Finn and Phasma. And with John, he is similar to Adam and Daisy. He just trained his butt off for this fight to the point where I could do what you just saw there, where I could just dolly back with the two of these guys and see them going at it. And it's really extraordinary. It's a really fun day. And then this little moment, which is kind of our homage to the moment in Back to the Future 2, where he comes up on the DeLorean. Steal from the best. When we were talking about having the mask shattered and seeing through, there's a lot of discussion about what Phasma's eye should look like. It's actually Daisy. I was talking with Daisy about it, and she's like, I think it should just be just like normal, just like a beautiful eye. And that was the most intriguing idea to me. The notion that you see behind this mask and it's not something monstrous. It's, something very human. I thought that was cool. BB-8 just grooving along. This is an extraordinary, huge shot by ILM. Anything where there's this much chaos going on this scale on it, I just don't know how these guys do it. Always makes me laugh. And this is something that Dolan came up with, this notion that he would reach for his sidearm until realizes that he's actually awake and he forgets it. And what happened always makes me laugh. So this moment coming up with Kylo, in my head, my goal with this movie was always, in regards to Kylo, was kind of twofold. It was, first of all, to kind of get more inside his head and in one way, bring us more into, if not sympathy, at least some kind of, to reveal his vulnerabilities in a way through Rey's eyes, so that we had to go along with her on that journey without just stonewalling him and saying, screw that guy who killed Han Solo, to have to bring us closer to him to understand him a little better. At the same time, I knew that by the end of it, I wanted to bring him closer to being the villain that he wanted to be in The Force Awakens to some point. I love these shots with Carrie. I love this little moment here. Anyway, with Kylo, I knew I wanted to kind of, by the end of this film, he's not Vader, but he has come into his own as a sort of villain, but hopefully one that you now have, and that maybe more, as importantly, Rey now has a level of understanding of, but that he has that strength and power of the Supreme Leader is dead, and in a way, he's earned it a little bit more. It was always kind of the goal. So this huge thing right here, this that you're seeing, that's a big practical rig. We had that big, huge ship kind of broken down on a massive track that slid forward. And Chris Corbolt, who was our effects supervisor on set, and his whole team were responsible for that. And also any other big practical effect in the movie that you see, it's Chris and his guys. And Chris has worked a lot with Chris Nolan on his movies, and he is just a master at finding these ways to engineer these big practical things that can create these very real on-set effects. It's one example of many in this movie where Chris really made it happen. This set was interesting. This set was just kind of like a little box, and I was very frustrated when we started setting up shots in this set, because it didn't seem like, I just for some reason didn't feel like there was geography to really move around in. But I ended up, working with Steve, and ended up being really happy with the choreography of this little dance of exposition that we have in here. Crystal Foxes, this again was something that was very early in the script, this specific visual idea of these kind of foxes with crystal fur, and the idea that, first of all, they fit into the geography. That's Joe Cornish, by the way, right behind Oscar, who directed Attack the Block with John. Edgar Wright is right back there between 3PO and John, along with Edgar's wonderful co-worker Leo and Edgar's brother Oscar. And they're all in there. Fun cameos. What was I talking about? Crystal Foxes. So the notion that they're part of this environment, the idea that this is kind of like a crystal mineral planet, and so the foxes the creatures on it would evolve to have these kind of crystal fur. And also I knew with the story point coming up later on, the sort of jingle jangle of their fur as they ran was going to play a part in how our heroes find their way out. So this is a set, but the trench and part of the base of the thing you saw down there, the big gun emplacement, and all this this plane here. There's Gareth Edwards there, and this is our second AD, Matt Sharp. So that was a practical set, what they were walking on, and then obviously ILM took care of the big massive wall back behind them. So these speeders were really fun. I knew I wanted them to be jalopies. I wanted to have a real kind of sense of David going up against Goliath here. And so I wanted them to be rickety and wanted them to just look like they were falling apart. I also knew that we wanted to take advantage of the red underneath the white and that whole graphic element. So I knew I wanted to have this kind of stabilizing ski that's sprayed up like a jet ski behind them, the red. At some point, this open canopy kind of evolved, kind of like a biplane or a World War I plane. And I love the element that brought in of feeling like our heroes are really exposed. These little jalopies. So the Gorilla Walkers, this is another Kevin Jenkins special. And we had talked for a while about what we could do. I knew I wanted walkers. It's one of my favorite designs in all of movie history. I love those walkers. And we knew we wanted to kind of do kind of an evolution of the design, but we both loved it so much we weren't sure what direction to take it in. And it was tough because we kept coming up with different ideas, but they all seemed too clever. And finally, we landed on brute strength. Like Kevin just said, what if they're like gorillas? And we just doubled down on the scary, kind of aggressive feel of them. By the way, that sound as all the things hit, that was something we came up with in the mix. Bonnie Wild, who was one of our amazing sound editors, she put that together. So anyway, Kevin came up with that walker design. The instant I saw it, I thought, that's cool. And here comes the Falcon. My thoughts exactly. It's funny, these gunning, these little gunning stations in the bottom. It's an interesting thing with Star Wars because geography-wise, they don't really make sense. Like, there's no real way to, because you're, especially if you're in an atmosphere with gravity, you kind of just have to, fake it a little bit because you're actually like looking straight down. You're actually sitting like looking straight down in them, and you always have to kind of fake the geography of them with the Falcon a little bit. You go back to the original films and you see they kind of did the same thing. There's not really room for the way the inside looks from the outside. This whole sequence is a little bit of a homage to the original Star Tours ride when they go through the comet. I always love that, but the notion of doing this kind of hair-raising Falcon chase through these crystal caverns. And originally this was a little more elaborate. There was originally a whole sequence where there was a massive like crystal monster that almost ate them, and another one of those things where you just kind of have to pare it down to basics. The bit where Chewie knocks the Porg out of the way, by the way, I had to work with Jonas because it had to make it very clear he was knocking him out of the way in order to press a specific button. That was something we had to, first few times he did, it just looked like he was punching him because he was annoying. And yeah, do that to a Porg. This big cannon, which I knew story-wise, we had to have it in here. I remember working design-wise, and this was something I worked with James Klein on initially, at least. And this was something where it was just like, okay, what is it? It's a gun. It's a cannon. What's the simplest expression of that? And there were all these much more complex designs, but I was like, I need to be able to look at and just see the barrel of a cannon and know exactly what its purpose is. And so we just boiled it down to its basic form, and it was just this basically gun barrel. So here's the moment where Poe kind of learns the lesson from Leia that you should have learned in the opening sequence of thinking of the bigger picture of can't blow all of our best pilots right on a heroic suicide mission. And at the same time, he's crossing with Finn, who's now come around to I'm fighting the good fight. I'm in this to the end. I'm not going to let him win. Who is crossing with Rose, who has been on that track the whole time, but is now going to come around and say, well, yes, but we got to protect the things that we love in the world. So, a lot of crossing around. That was a little thing that my editor, Bob, while we were shooting, suggested that we get. I'm really glad we did. He's like, you should just get some reaction shots inside the mind control center. And it was a lesson that we learned really quickly with this was you can only be interested so long in spaceships, ships battling. You have to cut to faces. John's so good. This moment, my goal with this moment was if we can make the audience, even for a split second, think, oh my God, their Finn is actually going to have a heroic death here. Like, for real. If you could actually buy that even for a moment. And I thought that would be a pretty incredible moment. And the feeling of relief when Rose comes in and kind of saves the day with it would just be immense and really powerful. And also it would just show how far John's come with his character over the course of this movie. He's gone from, getting in that escape pod to genuinely being ready to make kind of the ultimate sacrifice for the good guys.
It's almost there. Why would you stop me?
I saved you. Help me. That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
She's protecting what she cares about. The door in the background and kind of the layout of this plane and then the cliffside and then the door that you see here, it's another example of just thinking about the very basic elements of the story and boiling the design down to the simplest expression of that possible, which is a lot of what we tried to do constantly in this movie. It's one of my favorite shots in the film. You get a little bit of that close encounters of the third kind, looking at the monitor type shot, and then the light coming through 3PO back there. And then Carrie, I think, is just so beautiful in this scene. So I knew that I wanted Luke and Leia to have a scene together in this movie. And I remember so vividly this day on set because everybody, it felt like church on set. It was unlike any other day. When we shot this scene, there was just kind of this hush over the whole crew, and everyone was just really quiet and respectful. And it really felt like we were getting something really special between these two. In this shot specifically. The moment at the end when... Oh, this is Carrie's line. This is one of Carrie's jokes that she wanted to do. We got it in there. The moment at the end where Mark stands up and kisses her forehead, that's something he came up with during rehearsals. He just said, I feel like I want to do this. And I'm just, God, so happy. So happy he did. To play the whole thing of Luke coming back, as this kind of projection. I mean, story-wise, I knew I wanted him to come back, but I also knew that meant he was going to confront Kylo. And I knew that I couldn't kill Kylo, and I knew I didn't want Kylo to kill Luke. I knew Luke was going to, die at the end of this film, but I wanted it to be a peaceful and I wanted it to be the opposite of Han's death. I wanted it to be peaceful and a win, basically, in its own way, on his terms. So that's where this idea of him coming back as a projection came from. So if you watch it through, and if you listen to the sound, you'll notice we took out all of the footsteps and interaction of Luke. He doesn't make any noise when he interacts with anything. If you look at that shot where he puts the dice in, those are Mark's kids, by the way. If you look at the dice where she puts the dice in her hand, you can see he doesn't actually interact with her hand, and actually he just kind of puts his hand over and takes it away, and the dice are there. So we were very careful, even to the point of having ILM erase footsteps or erase dust he was kicking up. We tried to play as fair as possible in terms of him not actually being there. This is straight from a beautiful piece of concept art that I just thought was gorgeous. And I think ILM just did an amazing job creating this final standoff between these two. Just that kind of Western epic feeling. We were lucky enough to get John Knoll involved in some of these shots. And so I'm going to be so curious to talk to people who see the movie after they watch this. And I mean, in my head, it makes sense to me that you see this and you see Luke come out of it and you think he protected himself somehow. I'd be curious if for anyone when they're watching it, it tips the notion that he wasn't actually there. That was Ben Monroe, by the way, who did that little turn during the pan. He was our standby art director. And you I see, because all the stuff in the control room was later on in the shoot, and so if I look closely, every time I see a different crew member in the background, everyone was like, "Oh, we're almost at the end of the shoot. This is our chance to get in." So it's a lot of our crew in those shots. This little moment of, first of all, I think this is a gorgeous shot ILM did here, but this moment of Luke brushing the dirt off his shoulder is a little cheeky, and maybe I don't know. I like moments like this that kind of shake the gravity of it up a little bit, and I like the idea that that's kind of an unreferenced callback to something in their training that they had together or something like that. But I just kind of like the cheekiness of it. And even a little joke like that, I feel like in these heavy moments, especially in a Star Wars movie, it's I really love breaking it up with kind of unexpected situational humor. So here we're coming into the final home stretch. This is the final kind of epic showdown between these two. And Oscar looking gorgeous. Learning lessons. It's funny that that binoculars thing he's looking through, trinoculars, I guess. That's just a Super 8 camera. It's like there were a lot of props that were like direct callbacks to the original film that I would pick up and take a look at. It's like when you first see in the medical droid that his mouth is literally just a microphone, and then you can't unsee it. When I looked at that kind of binoculars thing, it was I was like, oh, it's just a Super 8 camera. ILM, I think, just it's such an amazing job here. And also, if you notice little details like the salts are sparking off of Kylo's blade, but not Luke's, and the salt flakes never stick to Luke. Again, us just trying to play fair a little bit. One guy that I should mention that I haven't yet is Peter Swords King, who was our head makeup designer, and a lot of work to do in this movie between Adam's scar and all the different states all the actors have to go through. Peter just did an amazing work. He did all the Lord of the Rings movies with Peter Jackson. This was another moment that Anthony and I kind of came up with, that little bit right there, and it was I think on the day the mic or the little speaker inside his ear was broken, and so he couldn't quite get the timing of it right. He was really frustrated with it, and then we put it together in the edit room and put his voiceover over it, and it was just I love that little moment. It played really well. And then here's the final payoff to
What are you looking at me for?
Carrie and Oscar's arc. And this little smile from Carrie at the end here, coming back for that and coming out of the scene on it. It was something Bob Doucet, my editor, did. And it's an example of how a good editor can really sculpt a moment and perfectly play it. I think it's just so magical, that last little smile from Leia, and that's something that Bob found, and I never would have thought to go out at that moment. This this was sort of inspired, this landscape here, by the pressure ridges on the glaciers in Iceland, but we kind of ended up altering it and making our own version of it, largely just because those have been, at this point, shot quite a bit for films. These boulders here are another example of just trying to boil something down to its simplest idea, and I just kept, when we kept designing kind of this thing, this idea of it's blocked by all these boulders, I just kept saying, make the boulders rounder, make them look like Looney Tunes boulders, make them look like Wile E. Coyote boulders, just to communicate the simplicity of it's a hole, it's blocked by rocks she has to get through. So there you see Kylo's foot moves the salt, and then there's going to be in a moment a cut of Luke's foot where he goes over the salt and it doesn't move the salt. Again, us just trying to play fair. Rob Inch, who I've mentioned a few times, who was our stunt coordinator, he came up with these pass-bys for Kylo and Luke. And we had to come up with a couple different passes where they would feel dynamic, they would feel like something happened, but then you watch them back and you realize they didn't actually ever make contact with each other. But they still had to feel dangerous, and Rob did, I think, a great job. Another specific visual idea I had with this landscape of Crait, which was another very early kind of thing in the process, was the idea of the red beneath the white. But the notion that during the battle and as the cannon fires, it would blow it all away and turn it to pure red, and then during the kind of showdown between these two, the salt would start falling and turn the whole landscape back to pure white by the end of it, something I really liked.
The last Jedi.
And then the notion that our heroes have been split up for the whole thing, and Finn and Rey have been kind of, to a certain extent defined by their distance from each other. And I just always knew in my head the movie had to end. If it starts with Finn waking up and saying, "Where's Rey?" it has to end with them finally coming together, these two friends. But they've been through their own journeys. And I love Mark's performance in these little close-ups here, and Adam's reaction. And also what John Williams does musically here. Through the whole movie, my God. I mean, I don't know how I've gone this whole commentary without just talking about John Williams' score the whole time. Getting to work with him was, one of the joys of the joys of the joys of this movie. And getting to see, not just in dramatic sequences like this, obviously an operatic moment like this, he just nails in the way that in this moment, this realization, and you don't get much bigger and more, grand than this. But in addition to that, if you watch some of the quieter scenes in the film and watch it just with his score and see how he rides the emotion of it, in addition to beats like this, just extraordinary. So this, it was always a question of, would audiences kind of understand what was happening here with Luke? And I think that for whatever reason, I always thought, I think that we're gonna get it. I feel like we're gonna understand that this is kind of an incredibly difficult thing that Luke is doing that's eating up all his energy, but we're gonna get that he's projecting himself, kind of fooling Kylo. But this final little scene with Luke here, I think Mark just gave an amazing performance, and we ended up just going back over it. We probably worked this scene and tweaked it the most in the edit room, just because it was so delicate in terms of the emotion of it. And again, I wanted this to be, I wanted this to be kind of the antithesis of Han's death in The Force Awakens. And I mean, that was such a powerful scene in The Force Awakens, and such a, incredible moment. I wanted Luke to go out on his terms, and in a feeling of, like Rey says at the end, peace and purpose. And combination of the music, cutting back to Rey here, was something we came up with fairly late in the game. Again, it's just the reaction of her, and seeing in her eyes kind of her kind of standing in for us, taking this in as she always has throughout the course of this movie. It's a really necessary thing. I couldn't talk over that. So here comes Kylo. This is very consciously echoing a shot from episode 3 of Anakin coming in that I always loved. Just a beautiful graphic shot that George did, and we wanted to do a callback to. And then in this final beat between the two of them, I felt it was really important to put a little cap on this going into 9, and kind of setting I want to see what happens next between the two of them, and they're enemies now, but complicated enemies. And that was always the intent, and I feel like Daisy's strength right there, it's just so powerful. And it was actually in the edit room that the idea of the dice disappearing came up. We tried it, and there was something really evocative about it. It made sense if Luke brought them with him, that they would be, not really there, and there was something very sad and beautiful about them kind of fading away in his hand. Kind of symbol of his father.
Hi.
Nice little beat here. It's I don't know. It's fun. I went back and rewatched The Force Awakens a few times just to make sure we never saw these two meet. And they were in the base together, but we never saw them actually come face to face. And I just really like the idea of these two kids finally having a moment together. And then this little scene with Carrie. First of all, it felt like a little party, getting finally all the actors who have been split up, shooting their own scenes, finally getting them all in the same room. And it's the Falcon, and we were filming this final little scene of the film. And, the kind of the first scene in this movie between Rey and Leia. And I think Carrie just brings this warmth and beauty to it. And then our coda, which always meant so much to me, and it was something that you could very easily lop this off and end with the Falcon going off, and that would have been a good ending. This felt really important to me for a lot of reasons. Luke, during the course of this film, has basically made the decision to take on the mantle of being Luke Skywalker and being kind of like a symbol of hope. And so to end it with the notion of Luke hasn't just saved this group of 20 resistance fighters. He has done what he said, what we want him to do from the crawl. He wanted to reignite the hope in the galaxy. And that expressed through these kids who are playing with a Luke Skywalker action figure and looking up at the stars and thinking, I can go up there and join the good fight. That's what these movies are hopefully all about. And that's the movie. That's The Last Jedi. Guys, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to shut up over the credits so you can listen to John's amazing outro music and read all of the names of all the incredible people who worked on this. And I've had the time of my life making this movie, and very grateful to have gotten to do it. And grateful to all you guys and to all the Star Wars fans out there. Love you guys. Take care.